innovating in AI when everyone sees it differently. Before we begin, I want you to let you know that you have the opportunity to interact with the presentation through an online Q&A. Please join me in welcoming our panelists and moderator to the stage. Our moderator this morning is David Broniatowski. Professor Broniatowski is a systems engineer and behavioral scientist whose work examines how information flows through complex socio-technical systems. I'll turn things over to him to introduce the panelists and get the conversation started. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Innovation Fest. Thank you for being here for this conversation on the many faces of trust, innovating in AI when everyone sees it differently. We often talk about trustworthy AI as if it's a fixed destination, something that maybe we can define once and measure maybe precisely, and then ideally optimize toward. But in practice, the challenge is not only technical, it's that innovation in AI is being driven by different ideas about what trust is for and whom it's supposed to serve. For some people, trust enables scale. If it performs reliably, for example. For other, trust may be what makes innovation legitimate. For others, it's about relationships. Alice Joubin is a professor of English, women's, gender, and sexuality studies, theater, international affairs, and East Asian languages and cultures, and a leader of the Digital Humanities Institute, which she co-founded and co-directs, along with the Global Shakespeare's Digital Performance Archive. Her work invites us to think about innovation not just as technical advances, but as a transformation in relationships between humans and machines, and to ask what kind of environments actually cultivate trust-inducing behaviors. So this panel spans engineering, business, policy, health, and the humanities, which is exactly what meaningful innovation in AI requires. And one idea stands out. Trust is not a feature we add, it's an outcome of how systems designed are governed and experiences. So Alexa, you've often emphasized the relational aspect of trust. And I'm gonna ask you a question, but I would also hope that you may react a little bit to the perspectives that have been shared so far through a humanistic lens. Trust is a relational concept, and generative AI in particular is forcing society to reframe how we think about technology. How do we enhance trust among humans and between humans and machines in this new context, and what does it mean for a trust-inducing environment to lead to more trustworthy behaviors?
Humans have always had an uncomfortable relationship to tools, and technology goes all the way back to Aristotle in ancient Greece, where he had the word tesne to describe artifice. It's basically the knowledge to do pragmatic things. And the question for thousands of years has always been, if we have certain tools towards augmenting human ability, what is the boundary of humanity? Enhanced humanity, transhumans, are they still humans? The answer absolutely is yes, because today we rely on medical devices, for instance, to regulate our biological function. While we place trust in the hearing aid, for instance, we don't tend to think of the human-to-human relationship. And I have emphasized how trust really is a kind of interpersonal relationship. It's not necessarily me and a specific programmer who's designing this AI, but I often think of the humans and invisible labor behind it and how our relationships evolve. There was an app, it's called Giggle for Girls, and supposedly it is building a trust-inducing environment. The programmers use AI to detect gender, and so they claim that the app is a, quote, safe space for real women to fend off non-binary people and trans women. Ironically, the algorithm failed everybody. Plenty of trans women got verified and they posted victorious posts on social media, while a lot of cisgender women, they could not pass the filter, right? Here, it's not really just a question of the algorithm, whether it's able to verify someone's gender based on photos and so on, but actually is a failure to understand that trust is an interpersonal social concept, and also to understand that gender is part of the social fabric. It's not an entity, and it is a misunderstanding of kind of trust as an entity of the algorithm, where gender as an entity is either this or that. You can check off. So that's just one example that I have here, and I have been emphasizing also trustworthy behaviors. While it's important to talk about trustworthy AI, what we really talk about is behaviors. Well, corporations lay off people, the massive layoffs, using AI as a convenient excuse, and that's just disguising. I want to hear Patrick's perspective. I think it's disguising corporate greed, economic downturn, a number of other less convenient factors. But it's easy to say it's AI, while AI is not really always replacing human labor. But we continue to see this wave of layoff, right? And that's not trustworthy behaviors. People who work for large corporations, do they feel empowered and being trusted? And do they trust the corporation? So ultimately, while benchmarking and measuring is important, we need to think about the environment, the social environment involving all the human stakeholders, and how we rebuild an environment conducive to trustworthy behaviors.
Thank you, Alexa. So there you have it. We have 4 very different perspectives on trust in AI. On one hand, we have trust as metrics, but of course those metrics are contingent on context. We have a question of whether trust is something that can even exist when there's such massive power disparities. We have trust as something that emerges from the fact that the systems themselves are, in a sense, boring. We trust because we don't have to pay attention. And then we have trust as a social function, trust as a relationship. Since we're here at Innovation Fest, and I want to bring the conversation to this question of innovation, you'll forgive me for saying a dirty word, which is regulation. How does regulation kill innovation? Or, on the other hand, is it the only thing that makes AI safe enough to be adopted by everyone? What is the right time to put in these sorts of protections so that we get the balance right between innovation on one hand versus responsible adoption on the other? So does anybody on the panel want to volunteer to take that one first?
Regulation shouldn't be thought of merely as constraints. My field is literature. It's full of patterns and regulations. A sonnet by Shakespeare follows certain rules. There's to be 14 lines. Does that kill creativity? Actually, it sparks creativity, because if you are writing a haiku, you are writing a genre fiction. You are following these so-called regulations, and you are being creative about these boundaries. So boundaries, I would say, really bring out the creativity. On the other hand, I think unregulated industry is not very productive by itself. According to a study that just released, the current state of AI industry by Stanford Human-Centered AI Initiative, there is far more hate against large AI companies, just in the society in general, in the US, than the companies themselves. So their self-perception versus the society's perception of them, there's a huge gap. 73% of those surveyed that they just have this unease, this lack of trust. That's largely because of this. I don't think it's currently regulated, and the copyright lawsuits continue, right? That's just an example. So I honestly think proper regulation would actually bring trust back and creativity, as well as the vitality of the entire group.
I think we completely agree. So it's the constraints that deconstrain. She said it much more eloquently than me, but I think we're actually on the same page there.
You know, the bigger an entity gets, and the less competition there is, they don't have motivation to innovate further. They want a product that is just good enough to keep making the money. There's also the corporate lingo of efficiency. I'm no business expert, but I'm tired of efficiency. What they meant is short-term gain. Nobody's thinking about 20 years, and when they say the answer to their stakeholders, to the board, it literally is kind of sidestepping the consumers. In academic publishing, Routledge and Springer Nature, they have the largest share of the publishing market. They own the journals, for instance, the means of productions. Scholars like us, we provide free labor of writing, of reviewing, and their profit margin as 43 to 45% actually is higher than Google and Apple, according to some accounts. That's astonishing. Now, have we seen innovation in this sector? Unfortunately, no. Right? Their model is simply exploiting our free labor and charge university libraries exorbitant fee of subscription. That's a unique industry where they have this model of largely free labor. And innovation has not come, despite the scale.
I actually want to turn to some of the questions that came from our audience. Is the issue too much mistrust, not enough discernment, or both in AI? So in other words, is it that we don't have enough trust, or is it that we just don't have enough discernment? We can't tell the difference between what is and what is not a reliable system.
To have trustworthy behaviors and to say I trust somebody, it actually involves me having enough knowledge of the situation, the person, the prior experience, and so on. So yes, trust this. It's not in a vacuum, right? We're talking about education. We're talking about making sense of past experiences. When we talk about trust and mistrust would be misplaced, like too much trust blindly in certain situations. And again, that also could be a result of a lack of empirical knowledge. Right, and currently, I think it's fair to say students and faculty in most disciplines, they don't really have hands-on understanding of AI. So it goes back to literacy, question, and education.
I would love to hear from everybody their really quick 5 to 10 second take on what are the most exciting opportunities for innovation in AI as you define it.
AI's hallucination revealing to us the cracks in natural language that we haven't thought of before. So this is a case of failure of AI being exciting. It's not innovating, but an exciting opportunity for us to look into new areas.
Thank you all so much for your attention. Thank you to our panelists, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day at Innovation Fest.